I'm Megan, and I live in Louisville, Kentucky. The neighborhood I chose to focus on for this project is called Portland. It is located in the west end of Louisville, right alongside the Ohio River. This is a map of the Louisville metro area, and Portland is highlighted in red towards the top. The adjacent areas surrounding Portland, which you'll see in the maps I show later, make up most of the west end, which is the most impoverished and disadvantaged part of Louisville. Between working in the court system and watching the local news, when I think of Portland, I think of a lot of violence, poverty, and disadvantage for the neighborhood. I'll be the first to admit I didn't know much about the area at all, so much so that I was actually surprised to discover my practicum site is in the neighborhood. Once I realized that, more images came to mind for the area, but mostly vacant lots, shotgun houses that are boarded up, and the fact that we've had multiple break-ins to cars in our parking lot and our actual office. But Portland has a rich history I discovered while working on this project. It used to be a separate town from Louisville, as shown on the historical map, and was obviously named for its purpose, a port on the river. The first commercial building was erected in 1812, and the river industry exploded in the following years. To accommodate the growing workforce for this industry, larger housing lots were divided into smaller ones, which is still seen in the neighborhood today, and that's why Portland has so many shotgun houses that are still around. The area has since been extremely isolated from the rest of Louisville. The river is a natural border restricting growth, but then the Louisville-Portland Canal was built, which moved most river commerce away from the area. So a lot of the budding industry that was happening was moved away from the neighborhood. Then, when the 64 interstate was developed, it became a border which cut the neighborhood off from the rest of downtown. This isolation has a lot to do with development, or lack thereof, since being built, of the neighborhood, and is exactly what individuals are trying to target now to create change. Just some demographics about the neighborhood. Here in this map, you can see the almost totally inverted racial layout of the city, with the highest percentage of African Americans in the West End, including Portland. Portland has a population of about 10,700 people, 66% white and 30% black, with a median income of only $23,000, which is less than half the median income for the rest of Louisville Metro. There are 88 males for every 100 women, and the largest age groups are ages 25 to 29 and 45 to 54 years old. When it comes to education in the 18 to 24-year-old age range, almost half of Portland's population has not completed high school, and 0% of the population have a bachelor's degree or higher. For the population over 25 years old, only 3% have a bachelor's degree or higher. 37% of the households in Portland are female householders, compared to only 7% male householders. And of all the neighborhoods in Louisville Metro, Portland has the second lowest 5-year average life expectancy at 68.3 years old, which you can see is less than the country of Iraq. This is a really cool interactive feature I found on the Louisville Metro government website, where you can overlay urban neighborhoods and identify different resources in the communities. So this map shows the only health clinic in Portland, right here. There are 5 K-12 schools located in Portland, but because of the way this local school system works, some students who live in the area may go to school across town. But when you look at all of those schools, every single one tests as needs improvement or progressing. All have over 50% non-white student bodies, with anywhere from 50 to 94% of students on free or reduced lunch. Additionally, there are only 2 social service agencies that are recognized on the Metro website, which are a senior nutrition center and My Practicum Placement Catholic Charities. I mentioned that I often think of high crime and violence when thinking about Portland, and unfortunately that's not totally unfounded. Portland ranks 3rd for highest violent crime rate in the city, and you can see the highest crime rates are concentrated in the West End. This is a map of all homicides that were reported across Louisville in 2015. This was the deadliest year in our city in over 3 decades, and as you can see, over half the homicides occurred in the West End. The Courier-Journal, who investigated these murders, also noted that of all the shootings that occurred in 2015, fatal or otherwise, happened in only 7 neighborhoods, Portland and the surrounding communities, which makes Portland 6th for age-adjusted homicide rate. One of the issues currently being addressed in Portland are the food deserts that have been created in this part of town. Again, you can see that the majority of food deserts are concentrated in the West End, but one organization is seeking to change that. There is a 24-acre parking lot in the neighborhood that I drive by on my way to practicum every week. It is overgrown where the pavement is cracked, but soon it will be green for a good cause. A nonprofit called Seed Capital Kentucky plans to build the West Louisville Food Port on this lot, which is poised to add 300 jobs and invest over $25 million into this community. It will be a space for farmers to sell local produce, for grocery stores to set up shop, and for the entire West End to have access to local foods, especially fresh produce. There will also be space for classes on cooking, nutrition, and gardening. Unemployment is one of the issues I heard most about during this project. Portland has the second highest unemployment rate in Louisville at 24%. It also ranks as one of the highest in terms of adults and children living in poverty. The overall percentage of Portland's population living below the poverty line is 42%, which is almost 3 times the percentage of the rest of the city. 37.1% of adults and 57.8% of children in Portland live in poverty. Housing is the other biggest issue people are discussing about Portland right now. Half of the people living in this neighborhood spend over 35% of their income on rent. The two words that describe housing in Portland best are old and empty. It has the largest number of houses built before 1950, and only 10% were built after 1980. So we're looking at a lot of historic but older infrastructure, which is often not being well maintained. Portland also has the second highest percentage of vacant residencies in the city, and you can see that housing vacancies, like all the other issues I've talked about, concentrate around this side of town. But for all these issues, there's a lot of beauty to be found in this neighborhood. It is truly historic with a lot of potential, as many investors are discovering. One such person is Gil Holland. He is known around town as the godfather of New Lou, which is another area of town that is much smaller, but was in the same condition as Portland. It is now a booming business and art area that is being overrun with hipsters. Holland seeks to do the same thing in Portland with the Portland Investment Initiative.
So the Portland neighborhood is arguably Louisville's most historic neighborhood. It hasn't had the same level of revitalization and interest from the rest of the community for several decades now. So parts of Portland have fallen into disrepair. So there's 3 parts to the Portland Initiative, kind of 4 parts to the Portland Investment Initiative. One is the East Portland Warehouse District, which we see as being an arts hub and a local food hub and some light manufacturing, and that's right along 15th Street, Lytle, between Portland and Market Streets. And then we see this area is the Portland Stroll District, which is the kind of the retail. You have Sandy's Florist and Shaheen's and Annie's Pizza. You have a lot of the Jane's Hardware. You have a lot of retail already, and there's just some buildings that need some love and need to be invigorated and filled up. So we think this can be more of a bustling retail destination shopping area. And obviously the Compassion Building is kind of one of the anchors to that. So there's going to be lots of nonprofits working out of this building. We hope to help a children's museum start and be located in this building. And there are about 40 vacant, abandoned, foreclosed properties between here and 15th Street in just a 10-block area. So we would like to figure out a way to buy all those, raise the money to buy all those, and put the investment into those buildings, get them back to being livable and not, eyesores, and not dragging down property values for the neighborhood. We want Portland neighborhood to be part of a good Jefferson County story, and Jefferson County and Louisville can't be a united great city unless we invest in the Portland neighborhood.
What Holland is talking about is gentrification, which Kearse, Ashman, and Hull define as the tendency of upper middle class families to move back into downtown and near downtown residential areas. The ethical dilemma outlined in the book is exactly the conversation that is happening surrounding the Portland Investment Initiative. For the professional interview part of this project, I met with a couple who have a similar dream for Portland, but are living it out in a different way. This is Sean and Inga Arbin. They met in grad school while pursuing their MBAs. When Inga discovered Portland and started learning more about the neighborhood, she fell in love with it and convinced her husband that they should move.
And my answer was, man, I sure hope you mean Oregon.
And I was like, no.
So we eventually ended up coming down to Portland and looking around, just looking at the neighborhood, and To be honest with you, the only thing that we could see was the beauty of it. And we found a house that we really liked, so it was all boarded up, ugly and nasty. It was in an alleyway, and we had done some research on it, and there was actually a couple of murders in the back alley earlier that year. And so we went and talked to the gentleman about buying the house, and he said, well, the house isn't for sale, but I'll give it to you for free as long as you buy the building beside it. And that's when we looked at this ginormous building that was next to the house and thinking, man, God, what do you have going on here? We looked at each other and went, well, I guess we just bought a community center.
And they did. The Arvins run a faith-based nonprofit with big plans for the neighborhood.
Our passion and our expertise is related to business, but in a way that wants to, bring sustainability and hope back to a community.
Sure.
Rather than just coming in and serving.
Okay.
In a way.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of what we see happening here is a lot of empowerment of the local community through training.
Creating sustainability, and the way we look at that is that we create jobs.
Okay.
We create jobs. So
Okay. Their plan over the next 5 years is to create different job training programs, including a culinary track, woodworking, like craftsmanship, electrician and plumbing vocations, computer coding program, recording studio and radio station, art and photography, and auto mechanics. Additionally, they want to provide tutoring programs and special partnerships with U of L Speed School alumni to promote math, science, and engineering. They also house one of the local elementary school basketball teams for weekly practice and open gym for the neighborhood kids after school. They are really seeking to serve children, youth, and young adults in all of Portland. This is the exact demographic I mentioned earlier, where 40% haven't graduated high school. The Arvins are really seeking to impact the younger generation of Portland, to give them the skills they want and need for professional roles so that they can use them in their neighborhood and create economic stimulation. I think the Arvins have identified the biggest need for Portland: economic stimulation. And not the kind where investors pour billions of dollars into the community and move upper-class people into renovated houses and move the current lower-class neighbors further out. To me, this begins with education. If 40% of the young adults in Portland haven't graduated high school or attained a diploma equivalent, their options are limited for entering the workforce. My first step would be to work with the local schools to identify the biggest barriers to early educational success. Is it a need for after-school programs and tutors? Better resources in the schools? Access to learning better parenting skills in the home? Changing the trajectory of early education changes a person's life. The next step is to support programs like Love City and the vocational training programs they are developing. These programs can effectively take at-risk young adults off the street and put them into a program that will provide them with skills to go out into their communities and succeed. The economic stimulation provided from these training programs will generate higher living conditions throughout the community. Individuals will spend less of their income on rent and be able to afford residential maintenance, which will raise property values without the need for an outsider to pump in hundreds of thousands of dollars over a short period of time. There are multiple stakeholders who have to get involved in this kind of advocacy. First and foremost, you have to work with the school system to identify needs and resources. Secondly, if Love City's programs are going to succeed, community partners need to support them. Financially, yes, but more importantly with the skill sets already existing in the community. The downside to this plan is that it takes time. What we're really talking about is raising up the next generation in Portland. What Gil Holland is talking about is bringing in a different set of people altogether. His plan is faster, but in the end, I don't think it's good for Portland. Sean and Inga have moved into the community to become a part of the community and raise it from its roots, and that's what Portland needs. This project has really helped me understand what it takes to change a community. When I look around at the kids at Love City, I can see how the Arvins' presence, even for just a short year's time, is changing things. The Arvins are building relationships and being available to their community. They're not bringing hope from the outside like a savior, but rather looking at their neighbors and finding the hope within them. Just like micro-level client work requires, macro-level community work requires building good rapport and trust. And real change takes time. And I think we can all acknowledge how frustrating that can be, especially for young social workers who want to change the world. But when we remember that a community is just made up of individuals, we can remember that if we make a difference for one, it's worth the time.